A couple of days into U.S. President Donald Trump's 30-day tariff pause, but there's no sign yet of a permanent reprieve. So facing that threat, the feds are looking to shore up European trade alliances and break down interprovincial trade barriers. With us now for more on that is International Trade Minister Mary Ng. Hi, Minister. Good to have you back on the show. Thanks for making the time.
Always good to talk to you, Vassy.
In your view, Minister, is the threat of these tariffs from Donald Trump about the border, or is it about the trade relationship between our two countries?
Well, I think we have to take the president seriously about the borders, which we have, and very pleased that we have a bit of a reprieve on those tariffs. And I think with respect to tariffs, we're going to have to keep working very, very hard to try to ensure that they don't ever come into place here in Canada, because as I keep saying to the Americans, tariffs aren't good for us, but they certainly aren't good for the American consumers at all. So let's work together to try to find ways to deepen this economic relationship, and tariffs are not good for anyone.
Do you think it's a good idea to deepen the relationship between our two countries, given the unpredictability and uncertainty of the past few weeks with Donald Trump?
Well, the trade relationship with the United States is a really big one. We do over $1 trillion worth of trade. It is an important trading relationship, and I think it's important to ensure we do the work.
She's the Minister of International Trade.
We need to always do to keep access and preserve access to this market. But you're absolutely right, Vassy. I think Canadians are asking themselves, how is it that we are so dependent on one market? And I, as Canada's trade minister, as you well know, have been spending many, many years crisscrossing the globe, negotiating trade agreements on the one hand, but also ensuring that Canadian businesses are able to get access to those markets. In fact, I'm going to be in the European Union later this weekend, and I will be in some of our CPTPP partners next week with hundreds of businesses in Australia, in Singapore, and Brunei. So making sure that businesses, Canadian businesses, access those markets that the Canadian Free Trade Agreement network provides to them is something we must absolutely do to diversify.
And certainly I wouldn't take away from those efforts and access to different markets.
Every time they say diversify, even though it makes sense in this sentence, it just sounds cringy. It's just like, you guys have ruined that word now.
Has increased, but at the same time, 75% of our exports still go to a single destination, and that is the United States. Do you expect that in order to escape the application of these tariffs in 30 days, we will have to make concessions in trade?
I don't think so. I think, and we don't know what that is, at the moment. I think what we need to do is to work with Canadians, as we have over, over many, many months, and certainly very intently over this last recent period of time. I think it's really terrific that Canadians are buying Canadian. I would encourage Canadians to keep doing that. But businesses that I talk to today are really asking themselves, what is it that they could be doing in terms of some of their suppliers that they might get at the moment from the United States? Might there be alternatives? I know that that work is not going to happen overnight, but I think that work has to, I think businesses rightly are asking themselves and examining that themselves, and we will be there to support them in that work.
I guess I would challenge you, though, on the idea that we don't know what concessions they might be looking for, because the president has spoken on numerous occasions pretty recently about the irritants as he views them in our trading relationship, and his advisors, too. I'm thinking, for example, of the User's Guide to Restructuring the Global Trading System, written just in November during the campaign from Stephen Moran, who's now nominated as the chair of the President's Council of Economic Advisors. So some pretty obvious things that he brings up, including, for example, the digital services tax, the DST, which is something
remember Saul was saying he didn't highlight. Apparently there's a clear list, and guess who's talking about it? Vassy Kapelos. So the liberal propagandist here is not making the liberals look very good.
President Biden also voiced much opposition to, and then also supply management. Let me start on the DST, Minister. Is that something you'd be willing to get rid of?
I think that I think that we should listen to, to the issues that the Americans have as concerns, and I think that we should, we should talk to them about whether or not there is something that we could be doing on.
Hey, how is Carney foreign interference, Kenzie? I'm sorry, but you lose me on that one. Was like Britain trying to meddle in our affairs? They're trying to go around the crown.
that front, DST being an example. I think it's work that we are going to have to do with the Americans.
Can I just ask you to clarify, does that mean that is something that you are willing to
I do,
negotiate
actually.
on? And I ask only because, like I said, I know your counterpart, Catherine Tai, your previous counterpart, I should say, Catherine Tai, has raised it with you previously. Your government said that it was sticking around. It actually was implemented, retroactive to, I believe, 2022, despite the opposition from the Biden administration. Is it now something you're willing to negotiate away?
Well, it was a commitment that we made to Canadians. And the commitment we made to Canadians, you might remember, is that everyone pays their fair share, including the big tech giants. And that's what that was all about. It was also in a time when we were negotiating a multilateral agreement through the OECD, where there is a general taxation for fairness at the OECD. So we were very much a part of those dialogues. But it was a commitment that we made to the Canadian people, and it's one that we kept. I think going forward, what we're going to do is, as you have seen us do of late, is really understand the issues that are prioritized and important for the Americans, and we need to enter into those conversations with a view of making sure that there are no tariffs placed on Canada.
I guess I'm still confused, though. I would interpret that as that's something that you're open to. And I just want to be clear, because this isn't nothing. This is something the president, for example, himself has launched a study on extraterritorial taxation. He is willing, people around him say, to invoke a power that would allow him to double taxes on Canadian companies that are operating in the United States. So the consequences are quite significant.
Yeah.
Mary Ng, she was born in Hong Kong and she moved here when she was 14 or something. But she's got, like, I was listening when I was upstairs getting water, and she's got like a really thick Ontario accent. Like, she sounds very.
It's not about that. It's about where her family. It's the same thing with Michael Chong, right? It's like Michael Chong was born here, but he's got like grandparents.
Oh no,
I
was just saying,
right? Like, it's like that's how they can get implicated too.
It's crazy how people can move here, like even at 14, and like thick Ontario accent. That's what I hear. Like, she sounds like she's got a very just the way she says some words. She sounds like people I've met here that like you would never guess that she was from another country based on her voice. That's all I was trying to get at.
Well, as far as everyone's concerned, there's no open traders according to the Hogue Report in Parliament. So
Hong Kong's technically was and is a British colony too. She's born in 1968, so I think it's technically British Hong Kong. So she's probably a British citizen.
Yeah, it's 1968, yeah.
Yes or no, Minister, with great respect, is that something that you're no longer wedded to, the DST?
Well, I'm glad that you raised what the Americans are going to be doing in that one provision of the president's very comprehensive trade memoranda. And we are, too, doing the work here in Canada to understand that work that the Commerce Department and the USTR is going to be doing from now until April the 1st. There are many things that the president is looking at his departments to give him advice on before April the 1st, that being one of them. And we're going to do that work on this side as well. And I think it's just too early to say. I think we're going to do that work and see and see what comes of it.
Okay, and Minister, on supply management, which is obviously a very, hotly contested political issue and has been for every political party and many different governments. Is there any possibility that you would move on the issue of supply management or grant Americans more access to the dairy market here?
Well, agriculture and the supply managed sector, of course, is really important to the Canadian economy. And when we renegotiated NAFTA, which is now CUSMA and USMCA and TMAC, supply management was very much negotiated as a part of a balance of negotiations in this trade agreement. And you'll remember at the very end, I think
like a lot of these liberals have broke ethics in some way. Like, what is the WE charity scandal? Like, every scandal every liberal's been involved in, has it not been because of ethics breaches? Like, you know what I mean?
With Trudeau specifically, has a lot of conflict of interest stuff.
Yeah, I don't know. I just feel like it's almost
There's a few. I think Randy Boissonnault, that was that one. Some of them are hard too, because it's like, I know people will say, but like if you have shares in an investment company that also has an investment in a company that gets money. That's such a far stretch,
you should
right?
not have any involvement in those contracts at all being established. And that was a problem with
if you had
with
shares,
Randy,
sure,
right?
I agree.
He had his hand in every single cookie jar, right? Like it was just absolute corruption, in my opinion, with Randy for sure.
I'm not trying to excuse what they're saying. I'm just saying sometimes it's not quite as bad as it can be spun to be,
This agreement negotiated by President Trump was touted as one that worked for the Americans, worked for Canadians, and worked for Mexicans. Supply management was very much a part of those negotiations on a balance
Trump's working with the WEF now too, so
of a whole bunch of things that went into those negotiations. And with respect to supply management, I would also say that the Americans absolutely have taken advantage of the dispute settlement system that is a part of our trade agreement. And I would like to remind your viewers that the dispute settlement panel in that particular instance actually ruled in Canada's favor, which is that we are living up to our obligations in the trade agreement, particularly around dairy in that case.
So for people, for example, who have a stake in the dairy industry, supply, farmers, for example, in Quebec, your message to them tonight is you're not going to concede on supply management.
Yeah, correct. I don't think Elon Musk is the best person to be looking into those things.
And finally, I wanted to ask you about one other thing when it comes to
conflict of interest.
Trade.
Sorry, I was just going to say, because they're talking about the Doge thing in chat, and Elon Musk, he receives funding from some of those grants, right? And he also, those grants go to some of his competitors. Like, it's a huge conflict of interest for him to be involved in that at all. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I don't know much about that whole DOGE thing. Saul's been following that a lot closer than I have.
Around, in particular, something a number of your cabinet colleagues have talked about lately, which is a sort of newfound support for the idea of building pipelines where it didn't exist before, for getting our oil, 95% of which goes to the United States, to other markets. Are you supportive of that, and do you regret not being supportive of it earlier?
I think that what we are all thinking about right now is what Canada needs to look like, what our economy needs to look like into the future. I think we're asking the question around the high dependency to one particular market, and the fact that with Canada's trade agreements giving us access to 65% of the world's economy, how it is that we might be able to diversify in a way that really protects Canadian jobs and is good for the Canadian economy. Trade infrastructure, for sure, I think has been brought up as an opportunity for us as Canadians. So I think that we should be looking at those very things and those very infrastructure things that are going to be important for Canada and for how they can enable our diversification into the future to the betterment of the Canadian economy.
But as Minister of International Trade, why weren't you thinking about that before?
We've been absolutely focused on.
This is what I'm saying. It's like, how is she a liberal propagandist, guys?
Making sure that there are broad access markets for Canadian businesses around the world. I agree, though, and we have succeeded. I mean, we succeeded in
but for oil and gas in particular, you've got TMX and you've got LNG Canada, the initial site. But beyond that, there's been a lot of stuff that hasn't gone forward.
Well, there's a lot of things that we have to export and to grow. I take a gazillion, well, maybe not a gazillion, but I take many clean technology companies and clean energy companies abroad. We are developing nuclear capabilities and selling that to places like Romania and to Poland and setting up infrastructure in Southeast Asia. So absolutely, we are selling and wanting to export more energy, and there are many other sources of clean energy that we have certainly been promoting and selling and wanting to sell more around the world. Hydrogen, blue hydrogen.
Okay. I have to leave it on that note. I'm out of time. I know your time is limited too. I appreciate you making the time for the conversation this evening. Thank you, Minister.
Yeah, but if you're not going to trust a big institution because they pay for everything, you might as well just not shop at a grocery store. Might as well not do like anything. Might as well not have a cell phone. You want to avoid institutions? Good luck. Like, go live as a hermit, basically, in the forest.
just take them at what they're saying, and if you don't trust something, go look into it yourself if you really want to, right? Like, and you got to just rely on people's credibility that they build up over time too. If if Vassy was coming on here
today, is relying on the credibility of this government is a little bit of a tall
well,
order.
No, not credibility of the government. I don't think that's what. No, I just mean for media figures, right? If you see her and she's making false claims all the time and she's not asking tough questions where those are available to her, then I mean, yeah, maybe question where her allegiances lie. But I haven't seen her do anybody any favors. Like, and she could be. It would be advantageous to her to have a good relationship with these people, right? Like, if they don't want to come onto the show, then she's not going to be able to have a show anymore.
Yeah, like
so
your
I
whole
think
argument is just like who pays the bills, like that. Like, it's just like that's not like.
And CTV probably gets a lot of their funding from advertising.
What news is profitable nowadays without lying to people? You know what I mean? Like, subsidizing actually can be helpful in certain situations. If Polyev was subsidizing them, you wouldn't be saying that. You're only saying that because you don't like the Liberals and Trudeau, right?
It's more than that. The reason you want to have these places maybe have a little bit of subsidization is because, yeah, you can say that they're getting funding from the government, they're relying on that individual government, but the hope would be that the government, regardless of who's in power, will continue to fund these places so that they don't have to rely on outside money, right? Because you don't necessarily, where do you want these conflicts of interest to be coming from? From a stable government fund that funds them no matter what? Or do you want it coming from advertisers who are flaky and might back away from a journalist who they don't agree with or has controversial opinions or something, right? Like, ad revenue can just be just as corrupting as a political influence could be, in my opinion. Like, everybody's kind of prone to these weaknesses. You just kind of got to listen to what they're saying, and if they lose credibility over time, don't believe them.
Anyways, all I was trying to say is with this whole thing, it's just like, I don't know, like if they didn't get any subsidies, then they'd be more incentivized for clickbait and for just lying to you. You know what I mean? Like, that will make them more money. You know what I mean? In the long run.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, just getting paid by the government isn't necessarily like, I mean, the police get paid by the government, right? But I mean, they're not like beholden to any particular politician. You would just hope that the police are going to be funded regardless of who's in power, right? You don't want them to have to be allegiant to one political entity in particular, right?
Minister.
Great. Thanks so much, Vassy.